The German government started setting up concentration camps in March 1933. In other words, immediately after Hitler took over as chancellor. The first people confined to these camps were political opponents of Hitler and the party and union organizers. Over time, though, and not very much time, various other undesirables and people termed antisocial or asocial people were confined to the camps. Now, initially, these camps were places where the prisoners would be confined and forced to work and not fed very well, not provided for, taken care of very well, and ultimately many of them starved to death or died of disease or exposure or were literally worked to death. It was later on, as the actual fighting in the war was was getting underway at the end of the decade in the early 1940s, that the, quote, final solution became the official Nazi policy, the final solution, that is, to the, quote, Jewish problem. And at that point, camps were converted, or new camps were made to be not work camps, but specifically extermination camps. So the whole purpose then of those camps was the execution of mass numbers of people. It was kind of like a mass production, sort of a tailorized version of murder, really. In the camps, prisoners were identified by patches made out of triangles that were sewn onto their uniforms so that the guards could tell at a glance what kind of prisoner they were dealing with. And you've probably seen these before. You're probably familiar with at least one of them. That's when they took two yellow triangles, and turned one upside down so that they formed a Star of David. And that, of course, was to represent a Jewish prisoner. But there were other triangles as well, and they were also color-coded. For example, red triangles represented political prisoners, usually communists, socialists, or anarchists. Green triangles were convicts or habitual criminals. Blue triangles were for foreigners and immigrants who were being forced to labor. Purple triangles were for Jehovah's Witnesses and other groups. It was mostly Jehovah's Witnesses, but also some other pacifist groups. Pink triangle was for homosexuals. The black triangle was kind of a catch-all category, asocial elements, and that included all kinds of different people who were rounded up, including people who were conscientious objectors, prostitutes, homeless people, alcoholics and drug addicts, people with mental illness or disabilities, and also people known as the Roma, which is where Romania gets its name, otherwise referred to sometimes, and this is not the appropriate term, but it's the one a lot of people in English-speaking parts of the world are more familiar with, gypsies. Brown triangles eventually specified specifically male Roma. So a large number of different types of people who were confined to these camps, including eventually the extermination camps. By the time it was all said and done, millions of people had died, either in the work camps or the extermination camps, over the period of about 12 years. Perhaps you've heard the figure 6 million people. That's kind of misleading. When you hear someone say that 6 million people died in the Holocaust, that number actually refers to the number of Jewish people who died. So 6 million Jewish people died in the Holocaust. That's not the complete number. That doesn't include everybody. The complete number would be closer to around 17 million. So 6 million Jewish people and 11 million other people. Eventually, prisoners of war, particularly people of Slavic descent. And as this is going on, rumors were leaking out to the rest of the world, but most people refused to believe that such a thing was possible. It seemed like sensationalized propaganda because no one could be doing the kinds of things that rumor had it, and it turned out to be true, that the Germans were doing in these camps. We said earlier that Hitler, in his Munich beer hall putsch, his attempted coup of the German government, had been inspired by Benito Mussolini and the rise of the fascist party in Italy. So let's talk a little bit about Mussolini and that party. Mussolini became a member of the fascist party when it was established right at the end of the war. Mussolini himself, a former socialist, disenchanted with socialism, who instead, much like Hitler and those people who supported him, was moving much more toward nationalism. So the fascist party, and that's their flag right there, get their name from that object on the flag, which is called a fasce, which is something that dates back to the Roman Republic. And after I give you a definition of fascism, we'll take a closer look at that object and that flag. First, to kind of set the scene there for Mussolini, he had gained a lot of support, particularly among the military and among a lot of industrial workers, much as Hitler would later successfully do. And he kind of started a little revolution of his own and marched on Rome in 1922. And kind of similar to the way that a lot of the elites, representatives of the status quo, thought that they could use Hitler and control him. A lot of the industrial leaders thought that the popularity of Mussolini would enable them to sort of set him up in the government, and he would then establish law and order and prevent a civil war in Italy between the left and the right. But they didn't know what they were getting in for, because he became prime minister in 1922, and, a fascist government was put in place. 1925, he abandoned any pretense at being prime minister or having any kind of democracy, and instead installed himself as Il Duce, meaning the supreme leader. It's related to the English word duke. So he becomes the supreme leader. And again, Hitler would model his trajectory on that, because when Hitler took over, he began to call himself, and officially really, as Der Führer, which is German for leader. Well, Hitler was obviously paying attention here and following both the tactics and the ideology of Mussolini and the fascists. Here I have provided you with a nice official definition of fascism from ye old Wikipedia. A radical authoritarian nationalist political ideology. Fascists seek to rejuvenate their nation based on commitment to the national community as an organic entity in which individuals are bound together in national identity by suprapersonal connections of ancestry, culture, and blood. To achieve this, fascists purge forces, ideas, people, and systems deemed to be the cause of decadence and degeneration. Fascists believe that a nation requires strong leadership, singular collective identity, and the will and ability to commit violence and wage war in order to keep the nation strong. So, a radical nationalist ideology in which people are connected by a strong national identity that is bound together by ancestry, culture, and blood. One of the mottos of the Nazi Party was Blut und Boden, blood and soil. In other words, a group of people who are all the same group of people. They are all of the same blood, the same race, blood and soil. So they are from the same place. So a strong sense of racial, ethnic, and national heritage. So that's where this image comes from, the fasce, which was a bundle of thin copper rods, which individually, each little rod could easily be broken. But when placed in a bundle like this, it became virtually unbreakable. So you can see all these rods are placed together in a bundle and they're tied together. And there is an axe head protruding out of the side, which indicates that this item can be used for offense and be very dangerous. Now, the fasce was something that was a symbol or a badge of office of Roman leaders. And what it meant was, we probably figured it out already, right? All these individual rods, easily broken, that bound together are unstoppable, so that the individual is easily defeated. But when all the individuals form into a nation, and that nation is bound together, they then become unstoppable and unbreakable. So that imagery can help you to remember what the ideology of fascism is. And it also explains a whole lot, because if you are going to put a bunch of these rods into a bundle like that, and you want it to hold together, the bundles, or I'm sorry, the individual rods, all have to be the same. They have to be uniform. Now, in this bundle, there's one little rod. The one in the very middle sticks out a little bit more than the others. That would be the leader. But generally speaking, not generally speaking, specifically speaking, all the other rods are the same. They are the same width. They are the same height. They are the same texture, so that they will all fit together. If there were some, weird off-kilter rod that was way shorter than the others and all of them were varying sizes, they wouldn't hold together. If they were made of different types of things, they wouldn't hold together. They have to be all the same. That is nationalism. That means that anybody who doesn't conform, anybody who doesn't match up to the specific requirements of this bundle has to go. They have to be taken out, because they're weakening the bundle. They're weakening the nation. And if we're talking about blood and soil, shared ancestry, culture, and blood, then people who are a different nationality that are in no way related to this one, they wouldn't fit in. People who have perhaps deformities or physical challenges, they don't fit in. People who maybe do come from the same type of ancestry but have a totally different political ideology that is in conflict with the main one here in the bundle, they don't fit in. So Jewish people, the Roma, the various religious groups that did not get behind the German government in its efforts to promote its military ventures, pacifists, communists, socialists, labor organizers, all of those types of individuals, homosexual people. They don't fit in and they have to go. So remember that. When you're talking about fascism, fascism does not just mean, it's not a synonym for meanie. And that's kind of what it has turned into for most people. Most people think fascist means mean. But it means more than that. It's a specific type of ideology. Now, fascism, almost by definition, is authoritarian. And that's where the confusion arises, because this conformity has to be enforced. You can't have foreigners. You can't have any of these other groups. It has to be enforced by the government. Okay? But that doesn't mean that any kind of authoritarian government is automatically fascist. As we talked about earlier with Stalin, governments and groups on the far absolute opposite end of the political spectrum, from fascist all the way over to the left, can be authoritarian. Other types of government, any type of government almost, can be authoritarian. Fascism is a specific kind, nationalism. Nationalism, and it goes hand in hand with race. That's what fascism is.